This team is locked in. And I understand, you know, there's luxury penalties that we're going to have to pay. So what? If we have to lose a draft pick or something,
also, like, what if Jeff Bezos becomes the owner? Can
Exactly.
we just mention that? Like,
exactly. It's a little weird feeling.
Weird.
But,
like, he wouldn't be present as an owner, but also we wouldn't have to worry about cap casualties
I did like how Wick was present a lot of the times. Every time I went to a Celtics game, I'd actually see him, which were very interesting. But, I mean, overall, just the fact that we have locked down this core, beyond the core team, beyond the core starting five, I mean, the bench, too. Like, we have set ourselves up perfectly for a dynasty. And I understand that there's no guarantee with it. Obviously, other teams have gotten better, like the Knicks, and the Bucks are, you know, they're going to be healthy again. But I really like what we've done here.
Yeah, and the last thought about this is that while other teams, maybe they're switching stuff around, we stayed the same, which means we didn't get any worse. Arguably, we're just going to get better because Tatum's only 26, Brown's only 27. These guys are not in their primes yet. They're just starting to enter that at time. Holiday's still going to be good for a few more years. Things are looking great right now.
And throwing Lonnie Walker in for 1 year, I mean, it does not hurt, let me tell you. Great bench piece.
And we'll have Al Horford for the playoffs this coming year, hopefully. Amazing second season for Joe Mazzulla, and I think most importantly, hopefully Brad Stevens will not be going anywhere anytime soon because he has done just an unbelievable job building a championship-level roster around the core that he helped develop as a coach. So now a transition into the opening week of the NFL, all the way back to Thursday night before, you know, the crazy Friday night game in Brazil and all of that. Thursday night, it was Chiefs, it was Ravens. There was a lot of hype going into it, and I don't think it disappointed, to be honest. It was a good game. I want to just open it up to that specific game in general, but I want to preface it with we seen the clear two best teams in the AFC going at each other on Thursday night?
I don't think that that's the case. I think there's some other teams that we can argue are just as good as the Ravens, if not better. I think the Chiefs are definitely one of the top two teams. It's kind of hard to argue against the two-time back-to-back Super Bowl champions.
They're number one, I'd say.
They're probably number one. But I think the Ravens do have some contention from some other teams, which we'll talk about later, including the Texans and Dolphins, but we'll get back to that. This game in specific, the Ravens had like 3 chances to score in the last couple seconds to take the game to OT. Yeah. Lamar missed 2 of the throws, and then Isaiah Likely, who, by the way, had a fantastic game, 111 yards and a touchdown, had a chance at his second one and just was 1 toe away from getting in for that game-time touchdown. So quite an entertaining game. Xavier Worthy for the Chiefs was the best receiver for them, I would say. Not a ton of catches, but a lot of yards, and he had an end-around touchdown as well. I think everyone in the NFL, I can speak for everybody, with Patrick Mahomes. Why?
Best receiver of all time. I mean, and they got Hollywood Brown, too. He was injured, he didn't play, but it's ridiculous. Like, when you win back-to-back Super Bowls, you don't get more weapons on offense. It's just not how it works. I understand how the Chiefs have done this. They still have Kelsey. I just want Kelsey to retire already, but he's still around. He's still playing. I'm sure he'll still be good latter half of the season. I guess going back to what Alden was talking about with Lamar Jackson, the way to beat the Chiefs is you got to be good late on. And I mean, the Ravens had opportunities to tie the game and send it into overtime, but Jack, does it worry you that, you know, one of the teams that we're rooting for to try and take down the Chiefs in the AFC this year, in the Ravens, led by Lamar Jackson, once again showed an inability to beat the Chiefs or to tie the game when it really mattered late in that game?
I personally think, and, you know, we've gone on the show and said this a lot, the Ravens, very solid team. Lamar Jackson is a generational quarterback. I mean, his skill set is something we've really never seen in this capacity. Sure, Michael Vick had unbelievable rushing ability, but something about Lamar's rushing ability is truly taken.
And he's won MVPs as well.
Exactly.
It's his ability to get out of those situations.
This team, and we've continued to argue this, and I'm going to argue again, this team is not ready for a Super Bowl. And I understand that, you know, Derrick Henry was one of the players that actually stopped them in one of their runs in the playoffs. But I will say that I just don't think this team's ready. I really don't. Even with Derrick Henry, I don't think they really have the experience. I think it's a lot of young players with a lot of raw talent. I really don't like them letting Patrick Queen go. I really did not like that. But I think that the Chiefs are just, I mean, they just got much better. I mean, you're not supposed to give a team a player faster than Tyreek Hill. Like, alone, Tyreek Hill and Kelsey was a terrible idea for the league to allow. And then Tyreek Hill goes, and somehow they managed to get someone faster than him. Faster than Tyreek Hill, who can honestly serve as a running back, too. And it's not like they don't have Isaiah Pacheco as well. And they also have Rashee Rice, who's definitely been breaking out since last year. He had an unbelievable game. I mean, this team is ridiculous. I personally think the number 2, considering Robert brought up the AFC Championship matchup, I think the number 2 is the Texans. Obviously, we'll get into that a little more later. But I really do think that I thought it was close. I do like that it was kept close. It wasn't a blowout or anything. But I think this is a very kind of expected result.
Yeah. Juju Smith-Schuster, who was their leading receiver a couple of years ago when they won the Super Bowl, they just brought him back, just basically on a free.
Dropped it, but
it's just have Juju for fun.
Yeah, and one thing I was going to say to you, Jack, going back to the Ravens for a quick minute, you said you don't think they're ready for a Super Bowl, and that begs the question: do you think they're ever going to be ready for a Super Bowl? Because Lamar is not getting any younger. He's 27 now. And for a quarterback,
that's still pretty young.
Well, yeah, but for a quarterback that runs like that, I mean, we've seen things with, Robert Griffin III got injured early. I mean,
that's true.
These quarterbacks don't have a great history of making it past age 30, which means if he's 27 right now, maybe you get 3 more good years of him.
I personally think that, yes, Lamar Jackson is an unbelievable rushing option, but there are certain times, certain play calls, where his receivers are just simply not getting open. His receivers are not great, and he has to run, and he's just simply not going to get many yards, and that can happen on a 3rd and long. And sure, you want him to run a lot. You don't want him to run 20 times a game. You don't want that.
16 carries, 120.
That's obviously an injury concern. I think that one of the main problems is they don't have a receiver. I mean, sure, they have Likely, who I honestly think is more of a receiver than a tight end, and he had a very solid game. I think they still need a receiver 1. I don't really like the approach they have right now.
Flowers isn't terrible.
I think Flowers is fine. I think that obviously his stats would have been a lot shinier if Lamar saw him wide open. But we obviously mentioned that already. But I do think that they need a strong receiver 1. A guy like who the Texans traded for, Stephon Diggs. I think that would have been a solid fit there. But overall, I just don't think this team is going to be Super Bowl ready, really, ever. And I kind of argued that with the Bills, and I don't think the Bills will either. I mean, maybe some galactic event happens next offseason, but I don't really see the trajectory for either of those teams to return to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I think the last thing with the Ravens is that they focused on the wrong things over the offseason. I think Derrick Henry wasn't the guy they should have been focusing on, because they already do have... What do you mean what I mean? Like, their running options, they have Lamar Jackson already. They have, they have, what's his name? The guy who was injured last year, Keaton Mitchell. He was awesome before he got injured. I mean, that could be a breakout RB. And then they have Justice Hill on receiving downs. They have Zay Flowers. Like, I just think they should have focused on receiver rather than running back in that situation.
I disagree, because I look at their receiving options, and I think that's enough to get you far. You have Mark Andrews, a top 3 tight end in the league.
Didn't do anything.
Who is still a top 3 tight end in the league. He didn't get a lot of targets. He's, had injury. He was in a car accident not too long ago. He's been shaken up this offseason.
Then what else?
You have Isaiah Likely, who's proven he's a very good player. Zay Flowers, I mean, those are decent receiving options.
Bateman's not a wide receiver 2, realistically. He's someone who can play wide receiver 3 from the slot, maybe, but he's not a receiver 2. And then Nelson Aguilar's a receiver 3? No, they need another receiver, for sure.
Not every team is like the Texans, where they have Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell and Nico Collins, like 3 wide receiver 1s on it. Like, the Chiefs have proven, the Patriots teams have proven that you don't need these insane wide receivers to win. I think they do need to focus a little bit more on their running game. I think getting Derrick Henry was a good idea, because I agree with what you have both been saying, that the Ravens need to transition away from just let Lamar Jackson run all over the place and score 100 touchdowns and win MVP at the end of the season. I don't think that's going to win you a Super Bowl. I think what they need to do is, allow Lamar Jackson to transition a little bit into more of a pocket. I don't mean take away his ability to run, because that can so absolutely change games. But lean more heavily on Derrick. Derrick Henry's used to being in a terrible offense and getting 30 carries a game. He can still do that, even though he's old. I think they need to lean more heavily into allowing Derrick Henry to do that. Still have some designed runs for Lamar Jackson.
They didn't.
I know.
They didn't allow Derrick Henry to run. They gave him 13 carries. Lamar Jackson had more than him.
Right, so if they're going to bring in Derrick Henry and not use him, then I don't like it. But I do, on the face of it, like the idea of bringing Derrick Henry with the vision of getting him more involved and allowing Lamar Jackson to pick and choose where he dominates the game with his legs, but also pass more, because I think they have enough receiving options to make it